Welcome, class. I'm so happy to meet you. So glad that you came to this class. My name is Eileen. The way you remember that is Eileen. Okay? Can you remember that? Okay, and I want each one of you to introduce yourself. But first, I want you to see a video of how important it is to learn English. I know you realize it because you're in this class. But learning English can be a matter of life and death.
Das hier ist mein Sektor.
Das hier ist das wichtigste Gerät des Küstenwächters. Das Gerät und das Gerät.
Überlebensradar.
Mayday, Mayday. Hello, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Can you... Over. We are sinking. We are sinking.
Hello? This is the German Coast Guard.
We are sinking. We're sinking.
What are you thinking about?
So we're going to be learning about setting up a successful EFL, ESL course, okay? So I gave you I want you to know the title TESOL, and you wrote that down. TESOL means Teaching English to Speakers of Other Languages. Okay, that's very important, so if you're the teachers, you'll know that. But for our use, we're going to use EFL is English as a foreign language, and that would be taught in places where English practice is not available. So it would be in European countries, Asian countries where English isn't the common language. ESL can also be used as a term in England and in Australia and Uganda, where English is their first language. So who can tell me the difference between ESL and EFL? Any volunteers? Okay, then we can stop there. I just want to make sure, you guys understand that. Okay. All right, so next slide. This is what you'll need if you're going to set up an English language course anywhere in any church in America or overseas. These principles apply. So you need a person in that church on the ground, or if you're going, say, to Morocco, you need to start communicating with someone that has either an education background or has a passion for teaching or learning English or having people learn English. So you really do need that. You need a person on the ground because you don't know the situation. You wouldn't know which people qualify to be in your class, and there's a lot of assessments that you need to do ahead of time. Okay, the second thing is these people on the ground will screen the number of students and do a pre-assessment. That's especially if you have a limited amount of time. If you're only there a month or two, you want to use every minute that counts, and you kind of want to have the classes divided up ahead of time. Now, if you have the ability to know who's a beginner, who's intermediate, and who's advanced, then of course you don't need to do all that. But I think in every situation you need to divide up your class. Because what would happen if you had beginners and advanced people together? The beginners would be so overwhelmed, the advanced people would be so bored. They would drop out and not be interested in the class. So assessments are very, very crucial, and we'll go over the assessment form so you know how to use that. Okay, you'll need appropriate materials to teach. You'll need materials prepared ahead of time, and you'll need training as teachers, okay? So what we recommend, if you don't have a budget and you need free materials, we have a course called Window to the World. Now, as part of the Peace Plan, we give that out free. It's 12 lessons. It's regular ESL material with a spiritual emphasis, because there's a Bible verse and a way to include the gospel in every lesson. Okay, now, if you want a fancier version and you have access to video and electricity, You can use Window to the World in a more sophisticated manner. It has a CD player, or you can download it online. And you can show this using the Jesus film as the video and then the lessons. But you don't need something this fancy. You don't need to buy this. We can offer you 12 lessons free. Okay, so that's a Window to the World, the 12 lessons available through hard copy or CD. Another curriculum that we offer and we suggest, it's available in almost every country of the world, is called Side by Side. It's a secular published curriculum. It's available in most countries, and it has very beginners to an intermediate level. And there are literally hundreds of ESL free programs available on the internet. Another thing that might be very easy for you to start with if you have no textbooks and you want to do this in your church is the Easy English newspaper. Each newspaper is set up for with a minimum vocabulary use, and it's also simple ideas that people need to read, and the bolded letters can all be defined on the back. There's a dictionary. They talk about things in this newspaper that most English students want to learn. The first page is a calendar of the month, and it tells holidays that coincide with the month. The second page is a page about people that come to other countries that make mistakes, faux pas. And they're very interesting. And maybe some of you could identify with these stories because you've all immigrated from somewhere else and living in America. You might find a story like, oh, I did that. Oh, I remember that when I first came. And so people love to read these stories. They also have the ability to write a story. Maybe if, as we're interacting, and you tell me a story of something that you did when you first came to America, something that was really funny. And I'll give you an example. One of my students arrived in New York City on October 31st. And they were in their apartment, and all of a sudden people started pounding on the door, and they were dressed so strangely, and the person was terrified. They said, what have we done? We've immigrated to this country, and now there's weird people in our apartment, and they're wearing costumes, and they're knocking on my door demanding things. And they were so scared. And then a neighbor came over and said, what is wrong with you? And she said, I'm so scared, I don't want to open the door. And she said, this is Halloween, it's trick or treat. This is a custom that Americans have, but nobody had told her. And so she was terrified, but she wrote a little story about that, and she's laughing at herself now, but it was very terrifying at the moment. So there's story after story that many people can identify with that have jumped cultures. So this is a really valuable tool for English teachers and it's very inexpensive compared to buying textbooks. So we highly recommend that as part of an English program. So what I'd like you to look at is the website for South County Literacy Council. And on that website, you can get this assessment form. So we created it, gave it to them, and they put it on their website. We used it all over the world, and so it's kind of nice. We can use it anytime we want. And it helps you sit down with students on a one-to-one basis. So now if you could look at the next slide. You can put the student's name. You put their country, their native language, date. That's pretty self-explanatory. And the questions there are graded from really one answer to open-ended questions. And there's only a few of them. But what you would do would you'd sit down with the student and you'd ask them the first question. If you say, how are you? and they say, "My name is Linda," you would know they are a beginning student because they're just faking it. They're not understanding what you're asking. And it's pretty funny. How old are you? And where do you live? Those are 3 very specific questions that all beginners need to know, and they would be at a beginning level. And if they can't answer that, then you're going to put them in the very beginning class. Okay, the next question is, what is your favorite food? Now that takes a little bit more explanation. How did you get here today? And that's a funny question when you ask. They say, well, by car, or I walked, or I drove. But sometimes they're not sure. Do you mean here? Or how did I get to America? Or how did I get to this country? So it takes a little more explanation. And then if you go down to the next set of questions, what do you do for fun? That's a very almost open-ended question. They have to come up with a sentence. And if it's not a complete sentence, or it's not very correct, or you can't understand it, you could say by that time they'll probably be intermediate, because they understood the first 3 pretty well, but you need to challenge them more. And then tell me about your family. That's very open-ended. You're not giving them guidelines as to what to say. They have to come up with the sentences themselves. And then what do you want to learn in this English class? If they're advanced, they have a specific agenda for attending the class. They want to learn English. Maybe they want to get a job. Maybe they want to pass a proficiency test. Maybe they want to go on the internet. Maybe they want to watch English movies, Hollywood-produced movies that are all in English. Okay, and then the last question, is there something you would like to tell me or ask me? Now, this whole assessment should only take about 5 minutes when you're sitting with the person. And after you do a few of these, you'll begin to see, oh my goodness, this person, between beginner and intermediate is quite a distinction. Advanced are easy to find because you can talk to them very normally and understand them. If you look at the description for beginning, intermediate, and advanced, you need to study those characteristics and really know them. And I would suggest that each of you maybe find someone whose language is not English, their first language is not English, and sit down. If it's somebody that works in your house, a maid or a gardener, or even a person at the gas station, or anybody, we're surrounded with people whose language is not English. Their first language is not English. You could just say, hey, I just really want to ask you a few questions. They will be thrilled that you want to sit and talk to them if they're not at work and their boss isn't hovering over them. And just to practice going through that and see if you can identify a beginner, an intermediate, or an advanced person. Because this is very important. You need a bottom line for the people in the classes. I can't emphasize that enough, because that could be success or failure of your English program as they get into categories. And then the teachers can be assigned a beginner teacher, an intermediate, or an advanced teacher. Okay, so is that clear? Any questions? Okay, so let's look at the next slide. Okay, communication is the goal. How many of you have taken another language class? Okay, besides English. Okay, would you say that you're proficient in that language? Okay, why? Any ideas? A lot of times it's because you didn't have the opportunity to practice it or speak it. So our whole emphasis in a communicative process is to get your students to talk, okay? They don't have to speak in perfect sentences that are exactly correct, because why? Communication is the goal, okay? Communication is the goal, not perfection. So you want to put them at ease, not correct every word they say, and positively reinforce every word they say. Okay, let's look at the next slide. If you as a teacher are doing all the talking, then no one will learn to speak English. Okay, so I tell all of our teachers, if I hear your voice the whole time during class, then I know your students aren't learning. And so our whole program is set up for communication. And so if students come in and they want grammar rules, you can always say, we include them in context. We include them in our materials, but we don't teach grammar rules. Many of my students probably know grammar rules better than I do and can spell better than many English-speaking people. But they do not know how to speak and communicate with other English speakers. And they hover and they become reclusive and they cannot fit into society. So you could be doing the greatest gift by getting them to speak and giving them opportunities to practice in a safe, loving environment where nobody laughs, nobody says, "What, huh? What did you say? I can't understand you." You know, they laugh when I say that because they hear that all the time. It breaks my heart, but they hear that all the time. Imagine if you were in another country and you wanted to go into a Starbucks and you wanted your special coffee and you did not have the words. Would you ever go in there? No, you'd never go in there. You'd stay in your house, make your own coffee. But you could never have that chance to go out, socialize, enjoy life. And this is what you could do. You could open that up to students and people in your life. Okay, so in doing an ESL program, there's a certain responsibility that teachers will have. One of them is you're going to prepare weekly lesson plans. And in each of our lessons in Window to the World, we have a do-ahead area, do-ahead section. We emphasize you have to create a warm, loving environment with the people. You know, even if that means spending time outside of class, asking questions about their family, their children. You know, you want to create that comfortable, safe learning environment and community. I know where I teach, I had 6 different nationalities at the table, and none of them knew each other. And at the end of the first semester, that you would think they were best of friends. And they shared their customs, they shared their holidays, they shared their food. And these were very near and dear to them, and it touched their heart that somebody was interested. And also it opens up all kinds of doors of communication for cross-cultural communication. Sometimes people don't understand, and so they're like, oh, you know, they're put off. But this can open up amazing doors of communication. It could even stop wars, because if people can understand each other and understand where they're coming from and communicate, it can make a lot of difference in their life. Okay, one thing that's sometimes difficult is to get the students to interact, talk amongst themselves in English only. So I have a few tricks up my sleeve. A lot of times, if I have that problem, I haven't had that problem lately, I give out maybe like small coins, depending on which country you're in. It doesn't cost me a lot, and I put them on the table. And then I give 3 to each person at the table. And if I catch them speaking in their own language, then they have to give it back to me. And it's just an awareness thing. You know, some of them have all their money gone, and they're borrowing from their neighbor because they have that habit. And that's another reason why we don't use translators. I think one of the biggest disservices of people coming to learn English is to assign a translator to them. Because who do they depend on? The translator. Who do they listen to? Do they listen to the teacher? No. They turn and they talk to the translator the whole time. So even if they're not understanding it, even if they're understanding 10%, they're listening, they're functioning in English, and it's really, really important that they listen and hear. Okay, we try to get our students to respond quickly to questions asked, and we also require that they're able to answer 10 basic questions very quickly and confidently. I'll tell you why. We had a foreign student living with us for a year. She was a high school student. She got off the plane. She had no English. on her chart it said fair. Well, fair to me meant she could understand. But when I said, hello, Noriko, how are you? I just got this blank stare. She had nothing. And when I had her tested, it was at 0. So all of my daughter's friends would come to speak to her and ask her a question. And they would ask her a quick question, and she'd just stare at them. She didn't know what to say. And I knew she had an English background because she'd taken English in school. I knew she could understand. She just couldn't get the words out. So the same kids that would come in would ask a set of questions. Oh, how old are you? Do you drive in your country? How old are students when they drive? You know, there's like a set question that everybody will ask. What are you doing here? Where did you come from? You know. So I taught her the answers to 10 basic questions that I heard these students ask her over and over again. And I made her practice. And and I said, Noriko, you have to speak really quickly. And you have to speak confidently, and you have to speak loudly. That's what Americans like. They love loud, okay? So after a while, she began to gain some confidence when the kids would come in and say, oh, nice to meet you, Noriko. Where are you from? I'm from Japan. How old are you? I am 16 years old. Oh, what grade are you here? I'm a junior in high school. Do you drive? No, I do not drive. Nobody has cars in my family. We take public transportation. So she learned how to answer quickly, loudly, and confidently. And it was only 10 questions. But that gave her confidence to go on to more. And then I started telling her, when people ask you a question, then you put a little hook at the end. When they ask you a question, you go, and you? How old are you? You know, do you drive? What grade are you in? So that gave her even 10 more sentences she could say. And we built from that base on. Well, we do that with our students that come, even older students that come. We had the 7 different nationalities. I made sure all of them could answer a set of 10 questions by the end of the semester. Confidently, loudly, and clearly. And they said, oh, that made such a difference. Okay, so for wherever you are, you can make up a list of 10 questions. And this is, 10 most often asked questions, you can create your own list. Let's stop there for a minute. And maybe what you guys can tell me is, what were some questions from your country that you would make up? So that's where I'd stop and ask the students, you know, if you're teaching this in Morocco, what are some questions that people ask you all the time when you come there? Like, why are you here? What are you doing? Where'd you come from? How many people in your family? Are you married? You know, how old are you? I mean, they'll ask you all those questions. And you learn the basic answers and say them confidently, loudly, clearly. And it will give you a lot of clout. I know when my husband would take people to Rwanda, he'd teach them like 5 basic greetings. And people would be so excited that you learn that. Okay? So that's kind of what that 10 most often asked questions. If you see it's blank, that's where you come up with your own. I can give you ours that we use here, but it might not be applicable to everybody. Okay, so let's go back. Now, as you're teaching English, there are certain terms that you need to be familiar with. If you could turn to the glossary, and one of the first questions is, or one of the first things is TPR. I think you just flip the next page, Patty. Next one? Yeah, isn't that? Yeah, no? Okay, one after that. Yeah. No? It should look like this. Okay, does anybody know what TPR is? Okay, this stands for total physical response. Okay, so could I have your attention? You all need to look at me. I'm going to give you a command, and I want you to do what I'm saying, okay? Okay, would you all stand up and put your right hand on your head? Very good. Oh, sorry. Okay, good job. Good job. Okay, I'm going to make you all stand. I'll do everything standing, so then you don't have to worry. Okay. Put your right hand down by your side. Okay. Extend your left hand and point to me. Very good. Very good. Okay. There's a whole list. Okay, you can put it down. All right. Pull your right ear. Okay. Touch your nose. Turn around. All the way around. Oh, you guys are advanced. Very advanced. Okay. All the way around. Okay. I know. Okay, so you may sit down. Okay, sometimes when you're sitting in the class, and you see people glaze over, you can say, okay, we're going to do TPR. And you could tell immediately who hears what you're saying and understands and who doesn't. Because a lot of teachers make the mistake, they say, okay, raise your right hand. Well, the person imitates them by raising their right hand. But you have to be disciplined and not do anything. You just verbally give the command and see how they respond. And you can test a whole class that way almost instantly as to what their level of comprehension is. So you can insert total physical response many times during your class. When you see their eyes glaze over, they're not understanding, or you've done a really taxing thing, say, okay, let's just have a little fun. You can do the hokey pokey. You can do heads and shoulders, knees and toes. Or you can just give a certain amount of commands. And you can kind of keep a list of your commands. And maybe do them every time you meet, at least 5 or 6 commands, until you see everybody in the class doing it at once. And that alone can help them comprehend and learn by listening. So it's a very simple method, TPR, but it's one that's very, very useful. And the most important thing is it gives you feedback right away. I taught in Africa for a whole month. All my students nodded and smiled. I thought I was the most brilliant teacher. Gave them a test at the end of the month. Nobody passed. And I'm like, what happened? Well, they were all agreeing with me and nodding. They could understand maybe 5% of what I said because that English was not their first language. And it was a British school. But their language was very minimal. I didn't know that coming in. And I never asked for a lot of feedback, except, oh, do you understand that? And people, especially from other countries, will do things to please you and to agree with you. And I had a teacher just last week say, oh my goodness, she'd been teaching for 4 weeks. I didn't realize how little they understand what I'm saying. I said, yeah, that's why we do constant feedback. Every single class, you should have something where they respond at least 2 or 3 times. Because, you don't know if they're getting it, if they're hearing it, or where, even for intermediate, you just don't know how much they're absorbing. But I'll teach you all these things that can help you get feedback. Okay, gap activity. Now, in your lesson, I can show you this. Lesson 9 in Window to the World, which you do not have right there. There's a gap activity. And gap activity, it means there's a gap. You're leaving something out. And there's usually an A part and a B part. And this happens to be a train schedule. So you cut this out, and it's all in your lessons. You make copies for your students. You cut this in half, and you give, like, this pair. I'd give you the A, and I'd give you the B section. And then you have to talk with each other and fill in the blanks. Because there's gaps in hers that you don't have. There's gaps in yours that she has. And so you have to talk and communicate and fill in the gaps. Do you understand that? So that's kind of what a gap activity is. Give information that's to one and information to another. It's not the same information. There's parts left out, and they have to talk and communicate and fill it in together. So that's another good way to see if they're learning what you're talking about. So that's called a gap activity. Okay, team teaching would be having another teacher up. Sometimes it's really hard when there's just one talking head up in front. And so it's always good to bring people in. If somebody's visiting, or there's a parent, or there's a pastor from your church, or somebody that has something they want to share, bring them up. You can team teach with them. The next thing is a jazz chant, and those are really, really fun. I don't know how many of you remember doing jingles or advertisements from television, but it's so easy to remember those things. When I was 10 years old, I remember Crest toothpaste had an advertisement. And this has been known to be an effective decay preventive dentifrice when used in a conscientiously applied program of oral hygiene and regular professional care. Okay, I was 10 years old and I'm using these huge words, but I'd heard it on TV over and over again. So it's like a jingle. Well, jazz chants are similar because they have words that rhyme and words that have certain sounds that are hard for them to understand. But when we do them together, they get it. They get it. And it's fun. And so we just don't want people to glaze over and not have fun. So jazz chants are less stressful, and they create a lot of participation with the students. And almost every lesson of the 12 lessons in Window to the World includes a jazz chant, which makes it kind of fun and gives you a little bit of variety to work with. But I love this one in particular because I teach a lot of students that have trouble with TH, mother, father, brother, and they say this perfectly clear. And so we always go back and we use this. And so I'm going to teach you this little song. And I think you all know the tune, for he's a jolly good fellow, for he's a jolly good fellow, for he's a jolly good fellow, which nobody can deny. Do you guys know that one? Pretty familiar? Okay, so what we're going to sing is, oh, my mother talks to my father, my sister talks to my brother, we all talk to each other, 'cause we're a family, we're a family, we're a family, we all talk to each other, 'cause we're a family. Okay, could you all stand up? Oh, Patty, if you don't, I'm so sorry. Would you prefer, you don't have to stand up every time. They can just keep the film off of you. Okay, that would be easier, maybe. And then they can film these two. Okay, so, sorry. Okay, so let's start singing. Oh, my mother talks to my father, my sister talks to my brother, we all talk to each other, 'cause we're a family, we're a family, we're a family, we all talk to each other, 'cause we're a family. Okay, so we have that song. And then we emphasize mother, brother, father. And then I ask them, what's 'cause? 'Cause. What does 'cause mean? It means because, but we shorten everything. And so it really means because, but we shorten it. And then we're a family. Ours are another thing that people have trouble with. So I say it's we and it's our, but when you put them together, we go we're. So we, can you say that? We. Are. Now put it together. We're. We're. Okay, one of the strongest sounds in American English accent is the R. So if you want to be understood, you've got to emphasize the R. We're. We're a family. Okay, so do you see how jazz chants can be so effective? You may sit down. When I taught a bunch of pastors in Rwanda, Americans feel really silly doing these kind of things. Because we don't sing, we don't do dancing, we don't do a lot of those things anymore. We just sit in front of a TV and we're entertained. But in other cultures, this is their form of entertainment, and they love people to sing, and they're very uninhibited. And when I went back to Rwanda, people go, "Oh, there's the English teacher." And they started singing this goofy song. "Hey, can we sing We're a Family?" And these were pastors that were quite dignified. And I was shocked. But they really enjoyed it. It helped them learn English, and it gave them a little bit different perspective and they really struggle with R's and L's, and that really helped them pronounce it correctly. Excuse me. So that's jazz chants, and you'll see in each of your lessons, or at least most of them, there's a jazz chant of some sort. And in our lesson that we're going to teach today, there'll be a jazz chant about being sick. Okay, choral response is very similar, where I say something and then I have you repeat that. This is a really good idea when you have a very shy class and nobody volunteers and they're very quiet. So what you can do is say, okay, repeat after me as a group. So you get everybody in the group to say something, and you get a choral response. Or you give them something very repetitious that they can't fail at, and you have them repeat it after you. And you do that until you feel like they get it. And so choral response is really, really great because they do it as a group. They don't feel like you're singling them out and that they're going to fail. And with adults, you have to be really careful. You want everything you do to be kind of a victory for them, because you want to build their confidence and positively reinforce them at every move. So choral response is fun. And another way to build confidence is a chain drill. And I'll demonstrate how that works. Because in a class, many times you have a very vocal person, and then you have one that never says a word. And so you can use that to your advantage, and that's why it's a lot easier to teach 3 or 4 people than it is to just do one-on-one. Because they learn from each other by listening and watching without being put on the spot. So I could ask a question about what is the short vowel in the word egg? Bonnie, she always has the right answer. So she'd say it's E, short E. Okay, so then I'd ask the same question. You're pretty smart and you always follow whatever she says. So I could ask you, what is the sound in egg that is short? The vowel sound. It's the E, right? Okay. Now these two never say a word. They just watch. But they've already heard 2 correct responses. So I could ask June, what's the vowel sound? What is the letter in the word egg that makes the short E sound? Okay. Marianne, what is the letter in egg that makes the short vowel sound? Okay. Normally, after she's heard this 3 times, she would get it by the 4th time, but she's really shy. And plus I changed it twice, so sorry. It's my fault. But this is an example of a chain drill. You ask the most outspoken, competent person, then you ask the next confident person, and then by the time you get down, they've heard it 3 or 4 times, and it will give them a win-win. So that's how a chain drill works. Almost like that old game where we play telephone, you repeat something, and by the time, but this is for accuracy and confidence. So anyway, that's a chain drill. And then I want to talk about realia. I know when I took a Spanish course, we had to do dialogues for Sao Paulo. Well, I've never been to Sao Paulo. I never have used the dialogue since. It wasn't practical. So what we try to do in communicative practice is to make everything very real. And that's where realia comes from. Realia comes from real life. What are these things? When I lived in Swaziland, we learned a language in the morning, and then we had to go in the market and practice. So we put it into practice right away, and it reinforced. And then we learned things about how do you order stamps at the post office? How much is something? how to buy things, practical things. So Realia is using things from real life. So if I were going to teach the lesson on food stuff, and this is very low tech, this is it's called a little wall chart. So I would get fruits or vegetables that are familiar to the people I'm teaching. And I'd bring them in. I'd bring in an orange. And then we'd work on, okay, which word is this? Which word? And they would point to orange. How do you say that? How do you say that word? Orange. Good, very good. Okay, so this is an orange. What is this? Orange. Okay, say this is an orange.
This is an orange.
What is this?
This is an orange.
What is this?
This is an orange.
What is this?
This is an orange.
Very good. Did you hear her? Okay, everybody, take your hand, put it on your back. Give yourself a pat on the back. Very good, good. Sorry, that was a little bit distracting. Okay, so what is this? Is it on here at all?
Yes.
Do you see it? Where would it be? Very good, Patty. Very good. Okay, Patty pointed to a pear. This is a pear. Can you say pear?
Pear.
Okay. What is this, Bonnie?
This is a pear.
What is this?
This is a pear. This is a pear. This is a pear.
Very good. You guys are getting this. Great. Okay. Okay, now, these are grapes. There are many of them. So we're using these, not this. We're using these. Do you see this on the list? Where would that be? Will you show me? Okay. And what are these called? What are these called? Grapes. Good, good. Okay, so right down here. Grapes. So what is this? These
Are grapes. These are grapes. These are grapes. These are grapes.
beautiful. Okay, so do you see the difference between this one thing and these? You see the difference? When you're saying one, you're saying this. When you're saying a group of things, it's these. Okay, these. And what are these?
Grapes.
What are these, Marianne?
Grapes.
Can you speak louder?
Grapes.
Good, good. Speak louder. Okay? I'm having trouble hearing you. I'll pull it out of her. Okay. So this is the idea of using Realia. Another thing, when we teach food, we take menus from a restaurant, maybe that, or even from a takeaway or a takeout place. Maybe something that's near you that people are familiar with. And we bring the menu in and say, okay, pick some foods that you like. And then we go through the process of how do you order the food? What do you say in English? And it's a great experience because it's something that they can apply right away to their life. So it's very real to them. One exercise we did with the first class that I had on this campus was we worked for 2 weeks on a dialogue about ordering coffee, bagels, and whatever Michael's Coffee House had on their menu. And we even worked on the dialogue of, can you leave a little room for cream at the top? Or do you want to leave room at the top of the cup for cream? And what size cup? And we worked all the different scenarios. And then we actually went to the coffee shop and we had people stand up and I said, if the person behind the counter says, what? What did you say? Then you have to go to the end of the line and you have to do it again. And I'll buy the treats. So you can order anything you want on this list, but you have to be able to answer the questions. And we had we had 8 people in the class, and all but one went up to the counter confidently after much, much practice, ordered their coffee, ordered their bagel with something on it, and you would have thought that they ran a marathon. because they were so excited that they'd actually completed a task in English and the person understood them and didn't go, what? What'd you say? I can't understand you. It was like a victory, a really win. Well, since that time, and we didn't have classes in the summer, there were 2 or 3 ladies that would go back to the coffee shop and meet and talk in English, have a little coffee time, because they felt so excited they could go there and they could order coffee. So it's these little win-win things that can make a huge difference in a person's life. And it was so fun to see their confidence. And one lady became a gatherer of all the people and became a leader the next year. And I found out she was Polish and had been a lawyer for the government of Poland. But here she was just a nobody. And her daughter had even said, "You're stupid, you can't learn English," to her. And coming to the class gave her such confidence. And you could just see her whole self-esteem changed after a year. She took the citizenship class. The number one reason people fail citizenship classes, because of lack of English. She passed. She was our poster child for citizenship. And you would have thought we had given her $1 million. And so that's why I think I want to do this teaching the rest of my life till I'm 100, because it's so rewarding and people appreciate it. And you're meeting a need. Okay, so you get realia, no problem. And then sentence frames. And I think you've all, since you've been in grammar school or grade school, you've all had sentence frames. And these are just papers where there's a blank left out, and then there's a box of words that you choose from. And I can give you examples if you want them. I have them here. And they're in your lessons too, sentence frames. So we use sentence frames to see and get feedback as to, are they understanding what they're reading? Are they understanding what they're hearing? You constantly need feedback. So certain things are very important when you're teaching. You need to be visual and you need to be kinesthetic. You need to use visual aids, real items to illustrate what you're teaching. And without looking down on adults, it's almost like teaching children. You need tangible items. That's why we use realia. You also need pictures or drawings or photographs. We talked about reality. You can dramatize things. You can mime things. You can use hand signals, quick drawings. And I'm not an artist, but I use a lot of stick figures. And they get it. And it's amazing. Just a picture and they get it. You have to exaggerate your expressions and emotions. And so sometimes I'm so tired after teaching because I'm like, okay, let's try this, and you're always moving your arms and you're, exaggerating. And our Korean students really have trouble sometimes opening their mouth, or many students. I don't mean to just single them out, but many of students have trouble, really expressing and opening their mouths because they're used to talking very quietly and without much expression. So we try to do exercises to drop their jaw and open their mouth, and we teach them, great, so they emphasize the R, because Americans can only hear, and the American accent has R as the strongest sound. So you need to exaggerate expressions, and then we do movement through games. And we're going to actually teach you a game today that's really fun. I have hundreds of games. And when I see people glazing over, we do a game, or we do a TPR. Who remembers what TPR is?
Total physical response.
Great, very good. So you can use all of these things to intersperse with the materials that you're given, just to wake people up, make it fun, and to give them a little bit different perspective. The old way of teaching English used to be repeat, 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 the Laubach method. And it was good, it worked, but it was so boring. The teachers would get bored and the students. But with communicative practice, you can intersperse all these different activities, approach the same thing, and you can use a lot of games and have fun. At the same time, you're building community and rapport with your group. All right, so we're going to stop right there. We're going to set up the game, and then I want to see you all participating. Thank you. Okay, so I want to show you some movement through games and how to reinforce a concept. Now, we've been working on opposites, learning opposite words. This is a more intermediate group. I would use this game for beginners, and I would say, let's do beginners first, and then we'll do intermediates, okay? So we've got words up here, and I'm going to ask the two participants to stand at the line, equidistant from the circle. And I would like you, when I say the word, you slap the word that I'm saying, okay? So this is how you'd use this game for beginners. Got it? Okay. Slap the word hate. Oh, you got it first, okay? Slap the word small. Good job. Cold. Okay, day. Oh. Okay, good try, good try. Okay, so for beginners, it'd be really straightforward. You could just put the word up, and then they have to recognize, they have to hear it, and they have to recognize it, and they hit it, okay? Now, we're going to change. You guys are now intermediate students. You have to stop and think before I say the word, and then really try on this one, okay? Are you ready? Okay, now you're going to do the opposite word, okay? Let's just try this for practice. The opposite word of love, hate. Okay, good job. We've got an eager one here. Okay. Okay, how about walk, run? How about sleep, awake? How about hot? Oh, that was a tie. Good job. How about night? How about right? How about sleep? Okay, good job. That just gives you an idea of what it's like to play the games. You can use this circle of confidence to reinforce any concept that you're working on, and it just makes it fun, and they think, and they actually learn through playing a game, because play is fun, and it makes you relaxed, and you can also be competitive. So good job, girls. You did a good job, okay? Okay, it gets you out of your chair and thinking. Another game to get you all to speak, especially Marianne, she's awfully quiet today. I want you to think of a number, or it can be a series of numbers that mean a lot to you. And I want you to pair up one-on-one, two one-on-one on this side. And I want you to write down the numbers. And then I want you to tell your partner what is significant about those numbers. So I will tell you my number. My number is 2-14-77. I love those numbers. Do you know why? Because my firstborn daughter was born on Valentine's Day in 1977. Her name's Lisa. So that's what's significant about a 2-14-77. Okay, so now you guys write down a number that you've been thinking about, and then share it with your partner, and have your partner share their number with you, and then one of you will report back to the class. Okay? Thank you. You can spend time speaking and interacting. Okay, so because your first language is English, I think you can just take 2 minutes to do this as a demonstration, but I'd love you to report back to us what the significance of your numbers were. And please don't use your passwords for the bank or any of your special passwords, because that could be significant. We don't want to get into your stuff. Okay, so who would like to volunteer to report back what they learned about their partner? Bonnie, you're always the one that likes to talk. Could you tell us about Patty? What's significant about her number, and the rest of the class has to listen. So Bonnie's going to tell us about Patty's number.
Patty's number is 70
Okay, and why?
because that's the age she's learning to dream again.
Wonderful. Oh, that's great. I can't believe that you would be 70. No, not yourself.
Yes.
Wow, you look so young. Okay, how about Marianne? Can you tell us about June?
Yes, her number was 16.
16.
That was the day that she finished school for good.
For good.
Yes,
Huh. In where?
in England.
I know that. I'm just, okay. That's great.
I didn't know if she knew anything.
Okay,
Yes.
good. That's very early. You just finished, you were done. That was exciting.
Yes, I didn't know then I was going to spend the rest of my life in school after that.
Yeah.
But I was through.
Okay, but you were through in the UK. Okay. So, okay, now can you switch partners and have the other person speak and then tell us about their significant number?
Oh, we already did that.
Okay. I know, but you report back. Now June will report on Marianne's number.
Okay, Marianne's number was 23 because that's when her birthday is.
Okay? And birthdays are important to you?
Yes,
Okay,
birthday's important.
okay. Patty?
Bonnie's number is 27 because that's the age she met her children's father.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so see, you learned a little bit about your partner that you didn't know before. And it's a very simple thing. It requires no material, no setup, no cards, no paper. But you can actually draw people out when it's something that's personal with them. So that's just I have maybe 16 or 17 other games like that I will include in your curriculum. But that was just a demonstration of how games work and how you can learn things. And especially draw people that aren't speaking very much in class. Okay, thank you. All right, so we're going to go on to mannerisms and maybe some of the things, bodily movements and signs are very culturally based, and so you have to be careful. But there's some basic mannerisms that we need to encourage, community in our groups. First one is smile a lot. Show patience through expressions. Never roll your eyes like, oh my gosh, are they going to get this out today or tomorrow? This is like so frustrating, You just have to always be very positive and positively reinforced person, or else don't say anything. Create a warm, accepting atmosphere, and you want to tell people, nobody in this group will laugh at you. And you really, I have one lady that's a little bit persnickety about a Chinese lady that doesn't speak very much. And I had to say, hey, you have to just be accepting because she's very accepting of you. And I had to call her out on it. And she's been so nice ever since. But it was really hard for me to do that. But you don't want to have anybody like, acting better than the other one because they're all in the same boat. And you want to create a positive environment. Allow extra time for mistakes. And if somebody gives a wrong answer, all you do, you don't go, no, that's wrong. You just say the right answer, especially with adults. You don't correct them straight ahead. You just repeat the correct answer. So that's how you correct them, but not directly. And go slowly for beginners. Repeat sentences correctly rather than saying, no, that's not right. I think you get that. Okay, let's look at the next slide. It's really important to teach these phrases. I don't understand. Please repeat and speak more slowly. I have them written in really big letters at each class, and I point to that. I said, what needs to be done here? Do you understand? What do you say? What do you say, Patty, when you don't understand? I don't understand. Okay, if I know you don't understand, then I'll say it a different way until you understand. Please repeat. You can see people when they're lost. They don't know where you are or what they're doing. And so you say, please repeat. And speak more slowly. Those are 3 really important English phrases you need to teach your class. And tell them information. Like at the end of the year, we always have an international dinner. And we tell people about it for about 3 or 4 weeks ahead of time. But we also write it, and they take home a slip of paper. It's very, very important. Because sometimes you think, oh, they get it, they're going to come, yeah? They don't have the address, they didn't know the time, they don't know the place. It's all new. So you never assume anything. You put everything in writing, and you say it. So you speak it, you say it, you put it in writing so they can see it. Okay, next one. Yes, writing new words when we're in our text, and there's a list of new words. I don't have a vocabulary list. I say, okay, memorize these words. We only do vocabulary in context. As we're learning, say about health issues, we're going to learn the word ailment or remedy. But we're learning it in the context of health. It's not just an isolated vocabulary word. Okay, we model them by pronouncing them, then we practice in groups. I go, okay, here's the word ailment, and I have a picture of the word ailment. Can you all say ailment?
Ailment.
Oh, good. Here's the word remedy. Can you all say remedy?
Remedy.
Oh, nice. Good, you get that. Okay, so we're going to be talking about ailments and remedies. Okay, and we're going to talk more about that. And then we divide everything up into either halves or fourths or eighths, depending how big your class is. And we never really single out an individual. But everybody feels confident if they do it with someone. See, that's a really good rule to remember. Okay, next slide. Okay, practice the lessons you'll be teaching. I think, as we all know, that we have to practice and go over it. Next slide. Okay, so now we want to take a lesson, break it down into parts, teach each part separately, practice by dividing the group in 2 parts, practice in groups of 3, practice in pairs, and then at the end we'll ask for a single person to volunteer to relay the information. Next slide, please. So each lesson has a pattern to follow. All 12 lessons in Window to the World has a pattern. And it starts with opening prayer. We have a Bible verse for each lesson. We have an introduction, warm-up, and review. We have a focused practice. We have a communicative practice. And we have a jazz chant or idiom, one or the other. So you can kind of get into the rhythm as you go through the curriculum and see, oh, okay, and your students like something that's set and that's the same each week. They have so many changes in their life that it's just like training students to follow a pattern. Okay, so we'll choose a lesson from Window to the World, we'll practice that lesson, and we'll present the lesson to the class. And today we're going to do lesson 8 on health. So we will find that lesson and we'll begin to prepare it. Thank you very much. All right, so now we're going to actually demonstrate a lesson. We probably won't go through the whole step-by-step of the lesson, but I want to give you a familiarity with what the lesson contents are. But we're going to assume that we've gone through lesson 1, which is introduction and names, lesson 2, which is family relations, lesson 3, which has to do with birthdays and dates and numbers. Lesson 4 is locations. Lesson 5 is about foods and fruits and vegetables. 6 is the body, so you learn the body parts. 7 is about clothing and fabric and textures and descriptions and adjectives. And so then we're going to go to lesson 8. And I've chosen lesson 8 because it's a really fun lesson. You can dress somebody up to illustrate what you're saying. And a lot of people need that tangible quality to understand what it is that we're trying to get across. And I don't know if you've ever been in a foreign country, but people's biggest fear is that they'll get sick somewhere where they don't have doctors, they don't have nurses, and they can't speak to them. So you can imagine if you're in this country, you don't have a grasp of English, and you get sick, you have an ailment, or you have a health issue. This is a very crucial chapter to teach people because they can begin to interact with our health facilities. They can tell people what's wrong with them and they can get help. So that's why we wanted to do lesson 8 today. So I'm going to ask my friend June to come up. She's poorly, sickly, has a lot of problems, and we're going to visually illustrate these problems, and then we're going to talk about them in relationship to the lesson, okay? So as you can see, she has a bandage on her head. She has a toothache. Okay, what else? She has a backache. She has hurt her wrist. Her wrist hurts. Her elbow hurts. Her arm is in a sling.
I sprained my leg.
She has sprained her leg and her ankle. So she has an ankle ache. She has many, many things wrong with her. And you have some prescriptions, right?
I do.
Okay, now wouldn't that just be scary if a doctor told you really quickly, okay, take these pills twice a day, with food, morning and night, and you didn't have a clue what he was saying. These are all written in Arabic, and it kind of gives you a feeling of what it's like to get a prescription that you can't even read. It could be a matter of life and death. So teaching English would be really, really important in a health situation. Okay, so June, here are the words. I have a, and what would you say for this area?
Headache.
Headache, okay? And what about your swelling in your cheek?
Oh, tooth. My tooth hurts.
Okay, so I
Have a toothache.
good, okay. And what about if it looks like your ear is covered and you're having trouble hearing? What would you say? I have an earache. Okay, now isn't that interesting? I have a toothache. I have an earache. Why do we say earache? An earache.
Because it starts with a vowel.
Yes, okay, so you can teach a principle, of a grammar principle, just by having her illustrate 2 different kinds of aches. And so it's very interesting to have a visual, a tangible person dress up. And a lot of people love to do this, and they really get into it, and it's fun. When we do the weather, a person comes in with an umbrella and layers of clothes, and then they take off the clothes one by one. When we do the body, we have people lay down on a piece of paper and we draw an outline of their body. So do you understand? See, all of these things involve activity, interaction, and the visual as well as the speaking the words. So once people use their body and use their visual and then they speak, it becomes a lot easier. They're more relaxed. They don't panic when they're trying to think of a word. They remember the movement or they remember the action. And it really helps trigger a lot of language ability. Because I know when I was learning a language, if people put me on the spot, I'd panic, and it seemed like everything flew out of my head. So a lot of our job as teachers of this is to get the people to relax, feel comfortable, and then they're not afraid of practicing speaking. So it's really, really good. So anyway, so on lesson 8, which is health and ailments, there's a Bible verse for the day, and we'd have that up in front, and we'd have that pinned up, and we'd talk about our body and our heart may grow weak, but God is the strength of our heart, and all I have and need forever. And then as a warm-up, I'd have June come up all dressed up with all of these ailments, and we talk about each ailment. And she's using a cane. This is a cane. These are bandages. This is a sling. These are medicine bottles. You can go through all of the nouns that she possesses. And then you can work on sentence structure. I'm sick. I have a toothache. I'm sick. I have a headache. I'm sick. I have a sore throat, etc., etc. And the lesson spells this out exactly what you're to do. So if you're the sick one, you pre-arrange everything and have it laid out, get them dressed up, and you bring them into the classroom. And the students laugh and have fun, and they interact with this poor, bandaged person. So it makes it fun, okay? So then on the board or a piece of paper, you put ailments, which is the problem, and then remedies. You put those two things. And you'll go through and you'll talk about all of those. And in the lesson, if you'll turn to the back of the lesson, there are student notes. And like in this one, it's A-7. There's a jazz chant which says, I'm sick, I'm sick, I'm sick as can be. Let me list my ailments, 1, 2, 3. My nose is running, my eyes are dry, and certainly I am going to die. My knee aches, my elbows bruise. I think I'm seeing things in twos. My head is dizzy, my back is bent. To the doctor I must be sent. I'm sick, I'm sick, I'm sick as can be. There are my ailments, 1, 2, 3. So you see that it has a jazz chant. Then on page 8, they have questions, and you can divide your class into 2 parts. And they can ask a question. Do you have a cold? Yes, ma'am. Do you have a cold? Yes, ma'am. How do you know? I have a runny nose. And there's all this going back and forth between partners. And so you can do the remedies and ailments. There is also a gap exercise where they have the ailments on one sheet, but they have some of them filled in, some of them not. And so you can do the A to some of them and the B sheet to the other ones. And then they have to talk and interact and fill in the whole sheet. So there's a lot on this lesson that's very interactive, and it's a really, really fun lesson to do. So I would say this is an important lesson to teach people who need instruction on health issues and how to speak to a doctor, how to go to a doctor's office. And you could actually role play as well, going to a doctor's office, having the doctor ask the question, what's wrong with you? I have a headache. What's wrong with you? I have an earache. What's wrong with you? I have an ankle that hurts. I have a leg that hurts. Okay? I can't read my prescriptions. I need a cane. I need a wheelchair. I need a walker. There's many, many things that you could work on. So I just hope that is a brief overview of Chapter 8, but it's the pattern that's throughout the whole curriculum. And it's just a little bit of an example how you can make it interactive, make it fun, and have tangible visual aids for each lesson. Thank you.